Welcome everyone to Masechet Avoda Zara, 1 week at a time. This is our 9th class, and today we are going to be reviewing Daf 57 through 63. And we're going to continue discussing the topic of yayin nesech. If you remember from last week, we discussed yayin nesech is where wine is used in the worship of idolatry, right? Yayin is wine. Nesech is from the word libation, from lenasech means to pour out in worship of. There was a very big fear or concern that the wine of the non-Jews, again, in the time of the Mishnah and the Gemara, most non-Jews are idol worshippers, idolaters, and one of the main ways that they worshipped idolatry was by pouring out wine or doing, dedicating the wine to their gods. We're going to see that could be done in numerous ways. Pouring out the wine, we're going to see in a minute that even if they just swoosh the wine around with their hand, that could also make it forbidden. And we're going to learn today that there's a distinction between what's called yayin nesech, right, wine from an idolater, versus the concept of what's called in Hebrew stam yenam, which is regular wine of the non-Jews, where we don't know if there was any worship done with this wine, but it is owned by an idolater, by a non-Jew. So we're going to see that, and we'll see as we continue, as we learn today, that there were many things done in order to prevent the non-Jew from coming into contact with the Jewish wine, or vice versa, the Jew using any part of the non-Jewish wine, because the assumption was that they used it for idolatry. Okay, so let's go to Daf 57. It says that if a non-Jew measured the wine in the Jew's barrel of wine, so you're not allowed to drink that wine, but you could still sell it. Now, again, here's the distinction. If it's really yayin nesech, if we know that it was used for idolatry, it is forbidden to drink, but it is also forbidden to get any benefit from. If we're not sure, so we're going to say that you can't drink it, but you can get benefit from it. So that's going to be the distinction here. Let's say a non-Jew touched the wine by accident with the tip of a lulav, meaning it's just accidental. So you can sell the wine. Again, you can get benefit from it, but you cannot drink it. Again, this idea is it's not really yayin nesech because he didn't purposefully touch the wine. Therefore, he probably did not, dedicate it to any god. But we're going to say you still shouldn't drink it. Okay, so now the Gemara talks about buying a non-Jewish slave, right? If you remember, we've learned in the past that if a Jew owns a non-Jew as a slave, that slave gets circumcision, brit milah, and goes into the mikvah, meaning that slave is converted to Judaism. So let's say you bought a slave from a non-Jew, and that slave had a brit milah, had circumcision, but didn't go to the mikvah, or we're talking about the children of slaves that are already owned by Jews, so they have a brit milah, but they didn't go into the mikvah yet. So all of those people are considered non-Jews, and they make things impure, or maybe not. Maybe the things stay pure. And here the Gemara talks about if they're adults. So then, if they touch the wine, it makes it forbidden. It makes it yayin nesech. If they're young, so then they can't make it into yayin nesech. Again, the reason is we assume that as adults they understand about idolatry, and therefore we assume that they dedicated the wine to their idol. But kids generally don't know about idolatry, and therefore they do not, even if they touch the wine, they do not make it yayin nesech. However, and this is talking about the slaves that grew up in a Jewish house, because they were not exposed to idolatry. But if they grew up in a non-Jewish house, maybe they can make it yayin nesach, because they would be familiar with idol worship. Or maybe both of them have the same law, that if they have a circumcision and they went into the mikvah, so then if they touch the wine, it does not become yayin nesach. Or maybe even if they have those things, if they still remember what the idolatry was, then they could make it into yayin nesech. Okay. Next, let's say a non-Jew, and I think that, Ilanit's not here, but we would discuss this last week in terms of like intent and not intent. So here, let's say the non-Jew stuck his hand in the bucket of wine and he swished it around in the store. Now again, swishing is a way to make something yayin nesech. And it seems that they were in like a fight. The Jew didn't want to sell the wine to him, so then the non-Jew is like, really, I'll show you, and then like sticks his hand into the barrel. So then the Jew says, really, I'll show you, right? He poured all of that into another like barrel of wine. That was like a bucket of wine, and he pours it into a barrel of wine, saying that like, oh, you didn't really make it yayin nesech, right? You didn't ruin my wine. So the Gemara says that you can sell that barrel of wine to non-Jews because it's not yayin nesech, meaning it's clear that the non-Jew is doing it out of spite or, just to get back at him and anger, not out of worship. Or maybe you cannot sell that wine, meaning because he swished it around, it is possible that he did dedicate it to some idol, and therefore you cannot get any benefit from it. And even the Gemara says at the top of 58 that Rava does change his mind, and he says you cannot sell that wine, meaning we are concerned that maybe it became forbidden. Or again, maybe it really is okay, but there's an extra gzeira, there's an extra like fence, right? In order to, again, as I mentioned, they were really concerned that that this was used for idolatry, and again, trying to keep this separation between the idolaters and the Jew. Okay, next case, a Jew who is appointed to regulate the weights and the measurements and prices, and he goes around to everybody's house and everyone's store, and he drinks from the barrel of wine, and then he pours back what was left in his cup. So the Gemara says it's forbidden to sell that wine. Or maybe it's only forbidden to drink it, but you could sell it if you wanted. Okay, next case, again, a non-Jew who is like deranged, puts his hand in the barrel of wine, thinking that it was oil. So here you can sell it. We say that he definitely did not have any intention to use it for idolatry. And therefore it is okay. Okay, next there's a case of two rabbis that were drinking, and they asked the waiter to pour wine for them. And they thought that he was Jewish, but it turns out that the waiter was not Jewish. So the Gemara says that the wine is forbidden, or maybe it is permissible to get benefit from that wine. Again, the question is psychologically, what is the waiter thinking? So one opinion is that right? Again, maybe he's thinking, oh, this is a great opportunity to, worship my God. Or maybe he thinks, oh, they for sure know I'm not Jewish, so they must think that what I have in the bottle is beer. And if it's beer, so then obviously I'm not going to use it for idolatry, because beer was seen as, right, it is seen as less expensive, less, fancy. So then he wouldn't do nesech yayin, because he thinks that he's holding beer in his pitcher. Okay, again, as we were saying, if he doesn't touch it and he doesn't have any intent, so then it is permissible. Okay, now the Gemara talks about a non-Jew. So we have the non-Jew touching the wine. What if the non-Jew dilutes the wine? If you remember, in the time of the Mishnah and the Gemara, wine comes very concentrated, and the way you make wine is by adding water to the concentrated wine, and basically you make a cup of wine by diluting the concentrated wine. So let's say the non-Jew does that. He pours water into the wine. Now, he's not touching the wine. He's only pouring water. So the Gemara says, actually, this would still be forbidden, because even though he didn't touch the wine and he just poured water into it, we say that we want to distance, as we said before, we want to distance the non-Jew from our wine as much as possible. We actually learned this from the Nazir. Remember, the Nazir is not allowed to drink wine or eat grapes, and he's actually told, don't walk through a vineyard, right? A vineyard now, actually, in my area, there are a lot of vineyards here, and the grapes are growing on the vines. So the rabbis tell the Nazir, lech, like go away from the vineyard, even though it's not forbidden for him to walk through a vineyard. But what are we concerned about? If he walks through the vineyard, he's going to see the beautiful grapes, and by accident, or maybe not by accident, he's going to end up eating the grapes. So because, right, this concept of trying to set up a fence so that nobody should be tempted, just like the Nazir, the same thing here. Even though when the non-Jew pours water into the wine, he's not even touching the wine. So he's not really making it forbidden, but we want to distance him from our wine, and therefore we say that it is forbidden. Okay, now we have a story of Reish Lakish, who went to a certain city, and he thought that he was still in Israel, but it turns out he wasn't. And basically he sees the people doing certain things, and he says to them, what you're doing is forbidden, right? So he tells them that they need to separate ma'asrot, the tithes, and he tells them that they can't drink the water that someone bowed down to. But it turns out that he was wrong, right? Rabbi Yochanan says to him, why did you say that everything was forbidden? You actually made a mistake. And he makes him go back and tell them that he made a mistake, and actually the things are okay, right? The place was really outside of Israel, therefore they do not have to separate Trumot and Masrot. And as we learned previously, even if somebody bows down to water in a fountain, it does not make the fountain or the water forbidden to everybody else. Okay, Daf 59, we actually have a similar but opposite story. Rabbi Chia went to a certain city, and he sees certain things, and he doesn't say anything. And then Rabbi Yochanan is going to tell him, you're wrong. Go back and tell them what to do. So this is what he sees. He sees a woman women who were pregnant from a non-Jew, and this non-Jew did milad, did a brit, circumcision, but they didn't go into the mikvah. And then he sees Jews that are drinking wine that a non-Jew diluted, and he sees Jews that are eating turmus. Turmus is like lupine, also grows near here, but it seems that it was like a bean, a legume of some sort, or a vegetable that's cooked, and it was cooked by a non-Jew, and he doesn't say anything to any of these things. And Rabbi Yochanan says to him, what are you talking about? Everything you just saw was asur. You have to go back and tell those women with the children, that the children are mamzerim, the children are illegitimate because they actually slept with these men who were not Jewish because they didn't complete the conversion process. And from here, we see that there's no such thing as like half converting. Either you convert or you don't convert. So these children, he says, are illegitimate. Tell them that the diluted wine by the not Jews is forbidden, even though, as we said, really it's not, but this is an extra decree. And 3, those turmus that they were cooked by a non-Jew is what we call bishul akum, right? Cooked by a non-Jew. And we say that that is not okay. All right, now the Gemara talks about let's talk about the wine making process. So can a non-Jew bring grapes to the Jewish wine press, right? The wine press is called the gat. And can the Jew bring the grapes there? So one opinion is no, right? We make an extra precaution, even though really, right? Or another opinion is, yes, it's okay, meaning, or like if they did it b'di'evet, if they did it without knowing, or they didn't know that it wasn't okay, and they did it, so really it is okay, but better not. And we're going to see that, right, at different stages of the wine-making process, the non-Jew could make it yayin nesech, and at other phases he cannot. Okay, second. Okay, next case. An etrog falls into a barrel of wine of a Jew. So the non-Jew quickly, right, he realizes the etrog is very precious, so he puts his hand into the wine barrel to get the etrog. So you're not allowed to drink the wine, but if the non-Jew keeps his hand still and you pour out the wine till it gets to his hand, then the rest of the wine is okay. Remember, we said that it's not actually touching the wine, but it has to be some sort of movement. So if he put his hand in, but now, right, doesn't move it, so then we will say that it doesn't become yayin nesech. Okay, let's say a non-Jew does nisuch, right? He does, right, worship his idol with the Jew's wine. So we said that the Jew is not allowed to get any benefit from that wine. However, says the Gemara, that the Jew can make that non-Jew pay for the value of the wine, right? We're going to look at it as damages, right? He now damaged the Jewish wine, so pay for the damages that you did, right? It's not like you're selling the wine. That would not be okay. But to get damages back, that is okay. And since we're talking about damages, so now the Gemara talks about other cases. Let's say you have a barrel of wine and the spout fell out of the barrel, right? So there's the big barrel and there's generally a spout towards the bottom. And then the non-Jew plugged up the hole with his hand. Now there's a discussion in the Rishonim. Does it mean that he put his hand like this, like against the hole to stop it? Or does he put his finger, right, into the hole, right? And you can understand the difference, right? If you just do this, so you're only touching the one that's right against the hole. If you stick your finger in, now you're touching more wine. So the Gemara says that the wine by the hole is forbidden to drink, but you are allowed to get benefit from it. And the rest of the barrel is permissible because they say that it's not connected, even though that's very interesting to say, because as we know, liquids, you can't say, oh, the top is not connected to the bottom, right? It's all connected. But again, as you can see, this is all fences and precautionary, not because we really think that it's not all connected. Daf 60, another opinion is from the top of the barrel till the spout, is asur, because that would all, right, come out of the same spout. But from below, that would be permissible because, right, again, if you touch the wine, right, all the wine above is going to come out of that hole. But the wine at the bottom, it's as if it's, not really connected, even though we know that it is. Okay, let's say the non-Jew is pouring wine from the barrel into a jug, and the jug is being held by a Jew. Then that is forbidden, that wine, because again, it's coming, as we say, from the koach, from the, not strength, but from the action, from the force, that was the word I was looking for, from the force of the non-Jew. Therefore, it is forbidden. But if it's the other way, the Jew is pouring and the non-Jew is just holding the jug, that would be okay. However, if the non-Jew shakes the jug a little bit, then it would not be okay. Let's say a non-Jew holds a sealed flask of wine. So if it's full, then it's permissible. And if it's not full, then it's forbidden because, again, he could shake it and that would be problematic. Okay, now let's say there's a wine press with a beam. Now, what that means is it's more like the olive press where you push something down onto the fruit, as opposed to, in general, when you make wine, they would put the grapes on the floor and people would actually just step on it. So here, if it's with a beam, if the non-Jew, right, pulls the beam down, so one opinion is it's okay because he's not actually touching the grapes. Another opinion is that it's not okay because, again, it's using his force. But maybe there's something, right, we said this is called the koach. What about koach kocho? What does that mean? It's secondary, right? It's not from the primary force, but he does one action which causes something else to do an action to the grapes. And as long as it's indirect, it seems that either there's a machloket or everyone agrees that that is okay. Let's say you have a barrel of wine and it splits and it starts to leak. So again, if the non-Jew holds it closed, you can sell it, but you can't drink it. And that's only if it splits lengthwise, right? So he holds it like this. But if it splits widthwise and he holds it down, so then you can even drink it because, right, holding it down is different than holding it together, which is an interesting concept. Okay, let's say the non-Jew is found by an empty wine press. So if it's still a little bit moist, right, it's wet, so then you have to clean out the wine press, and then you can use it. But if it's dry, so then you can just rinse it out and you can use it. Okay, the next Mishnah tells us that a non-Jew was found, like we said, by standing by the wine cistern where they collected the wine, if he lent money to the Jew. And then we assume that basically the Jew owes him money, and now you find the non-Jew standing by the wine. So we say, then that's forbidden, because we assume that he touched the wine because he wants to take the wine because he hasn't been paid for his loan. Let's say the non-Jew fell into the wine cistern, or he measured it with a reed, or he took out something from there. So then it's forbidden to drink, but you can sell the wine. Again, meaning it's not fully yayin nesech. If a non-Jew threw a barrel into the cistern, that is permissible. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to explain that we talked about the Jew owed the non-Jew money, and the non-Jew is now by the wine. So it has to be that the loan was connected to this wine, meaning that he told him, listen, if I don't pay you back, you can collect from this wine. That's why we assume that he touched it. But if not, then we do not assume that he touched it. If the non-Jew drowned in the wine, So then you can sell it, even though why someone would want to drink that, I'm not sure. But if he comes out alive, so then we assume he for sure was minasech the wine, meaning he used it for idolatry, because he's so thankful that he didn't die. For sure, he says, thank you, so-and-so pagan idol, because you just saved me from drowning. Okay, anything that, now the Gemara says that if a non-Jew threw remember we said if he threw the barrel into the wine. So if he throws a barrel in his anger, so then that's not yayin nesech, because you see that he does it just because he's angry. But if he's not angry, then we assume that he actually does it because he wants to worship his God, and therefore it would not be okay. All right, Daf 61, the next Mishnah. So a Jew makes there's a non-Jew owns the wine press, and the Jew rents out the wine press to make his own wine, right, kosher wine, and then he stores it with the non-Jew in his domain, let's say in his storage facility that is open to the public, in a city that has Jews and non-Jews. So then you can drink from that wine, meaning we assume that the non-Jew was afraid to touch it because everyone could see what he was doing. Therefore, we assume he didn't touch it. And the non-Jew wants to get paid for the wine, so he's going to protect it and he's not going to touch it. If it's in a city that everybody is a non-Jew, so then it's forbidden because we assume that no one is watching what he's doing and he doesn't have any fear, so he just does whatever he wants. And therefore, if you want to keep it kosher, someone has to guard or watch over the wine the whole time. Or the Mishnah says that actually the shomer can come and go. In the world of kashrut, we call this yotze v'nichnas, which means that the mashgiach, the shomer, the person who's watching to make sure that it's okay, says, I'll be around sometime tomorrow, right? And because the owner doesn't know when he's coming, he will be concerned and he will not touch it, right? If he says, I'll be by you tomorrow at 10, then obviously at 9, the non-Jew can do whatever he wants. But if he, has these spot checks, so then it is permissible. And then it says that all domains of a non-Jew are similar or one. We'll see what that means in the Gemara. And we said that the wine that you store by the non-Jew is okay. The Mishnah explains that it's only if he writes him a receipt for the money for the wine. But if the Jew has to come, let's say, to the office to pay for the wine, and then he can take the wine, so then that wine is not okay, because the non-Jew knows that the Jew has to stop by his office before he comes and takes the wine. Therefore, as long as he doesn't see the Jew, he can feel free to touch whatever wine he wants. And then that would make it problematic. We assume that he touches it, and we say that it is forbidden. So now the Gemara explains, even if the city is all non-Jews, wait a minute, we know that there are always Jewish peddlers that go from one city to the next. So why doesn't that help? The Gemara says, no, we're talking about a city that gets locked at night, and you know exactly who is in the city and who isn't in the city, and therefore the non-Jew will know that there's no one around, and therefore he will not touch, or he will touch the wine because he's not afraid. We said that the house has to be open to the public domain, but the Gemara says it can even have a big window in it, or as long as people can see in, then it's okay, because we assume that he is going to be afraid and he's not going to touch the wine. Let's say a Jew buys or rents a house in a courtyard of the non-Jew, and he fills it with barrels of wine. The Jew puts his own barrels of wine in this courtyard. So if another Jew lives in the courtyard, then we assume that the wine is fine, because we assume that the non-Jew is going to be afraid that the Jew is going to see him, and therefore he is not going to touch it. And if a Jew lives in a is a neighbor, lives in a parallel courtyard, and he has the key to the storage house, so then it would also be okay. The same thing with a wine press. If a Jew in that courtyard, right, again, if the Jew is in the courtyard, then the wine is okay. If the Jew is in the next courtyard, it's forbidden, even if he has the key to the house. Okay. Then the Gemara asks, what does it mean all the domains of the non-Jew are one? Does it mean it makes it more lenient, or it makes it more stringent? So one opinion is that it's more lenient, and therefore you only suspect that non-Jew, but if you store it in another non-Jewish house, so then it is permissible because they're not going to cover for one another. Or maybe we say it's more stringent, and we say that it's forbidden because all the non-Jews are going to cover for one another, and they'll do things, freely in front of one another. Then the Gemara talks about a non-Jewish viceroy or governor that takes Jewish wine barrels as security for a loan, or for security, and gives it to his sharecropper, who's also not Jewish, to watch. So one opinion is the barrels are fine because the sharecropper is not going to cover for the viceroy, and therefore the viceroy won't touch the wine because he knows that the sharecropper will tell on him. Or the opposite, right? It's forbidden because the sharecropper, right, is afraid of his boss and therefore is going to cover for him, and therefore we assume that he does touch the wine. Right, in a city where they keep Jewish wine, there was a city where they kept a Jewish wine, and they found a non-Jew there. If he looks scared, then we assume that he didn't touch anything, and therefore it's permissible. But if he doesn't look scared, so then we assume that he touched it, and it is forbidden. And that is the end of the 4th chapter. Now we're going to begin the 5th chapter. So Daf 62, the Mishnah tells us that we're continuing to talk about yayin nesech, but now we're going to talk about the wages that the Jew is going to get for working for the non-Jew with his wine. Okay, so we're talking about the wages. So the Mishnah tells us that a non-Jew hires a Jewish worker to help with his wine production. Again, we assume that the wine is yayin nesech, that it is forbidden. So the money, the wages that he gets are forbidden because, as we said, you're not allowed to get any benefit from yayin nesech. However, right, if he hired him to do other work, right, he's the gardener, he's the builder, but then he says to him, oh, wait, can you just do me a favor? Can you come here and move these barrels of wine? So then he can keep those wages because they're for something more than just touching the wine. If a non-Jew rented a donkey from a Jew to move his wine, so then that money is forbidden. But if he rented it to ride the donkey, and then he happens to put some wine on the donkey as well, so then it is permissible to use that money. So now the Gemara explains, right, why are the wages prohibited? So we ask from another case, which is kilei hakerem, right? Kilayim, if you remember, kilayim is where you take two species, specifically in the vineyard. So it's if you plant grapes next to wheat, right, which you're not allowed to do. So if you sold the grapes or the wheat, so that money that you sell it for, you can actually use it to betroth the woman, which is a proof for the Gemara to say that money is fine. If that money is fine, then why isn't this money fine, right? This money with the yayin nesech. The Gemara says, well, let's look at Shemitah, right? Let's look at produce that's grown on the 7th year in Israel. If you hired a worker to pick it, so the wages are okay, you can get benefit, but that has to be if you said pick the vegetables. So then it's not specifically the Shemitah vegetables, and that's why it's okay. So the Gemara says actually the wages really are okay, but it's an extra stringency. It's a penalty, a knas, for donkey drivers, which is another case, and yayin nesech, meaning really it's okay. But if you do work with this yayin nesech, that money becomes forbidden. And with the donkey drivers, they were doing work with fruit of Shemitah, and they used to get it as payment, or it was payment for their workers, or payment for actual, like they were working with the produce, and therefore that money becomes forbidden. However, you can give it as a gift, but you can't use it in general. Okay, now the Gemara talks about stam yenan. As I mentioned before, this is regular wine of a non-Jew, meaning it was not used for idolatry. If a Jew is hired to work with that, so then are the wages permissible or forbidden? So now the Gemara gives a story, and it says, and in the story it says that the wages are forbidden. They got paid for grain that they were transporting, and then there was also wine there, and they were told to destroy. They got paid with grain for transporting stam yayin, like regular wine. So they were told that they have to destroy the grain because they're not allowed to get benefit from the payment of this yayin nesech. Okay, so now the Gemara says that let's look at Shemitah. So the house of Rabbi Yanai borrowed produce on the 7th year during Shemitah, and then they paid it back on the 8th year with produce. So the question is that seen as a direct exchange, and then it should be forbidden? Or do we say because there was a delay, it's not really an exchange? So that's what the Gemara is going to understand, right? Again, if it looks like an exchange, it's problematic, and if not, then it is okay. And the Gemara compares this to the concept of, in Hebrew, it's called etnan zona. This is a payment that was paid to a prostitute. The Torah tells us that if a man sleeps with a prostitute and pays her with an animal, she cannot use that animal as a sacrifice in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple, right? It's like tainted. The idea is that because it's payment for something that is forbidden, it becomes forbidden, right? So that's similar to what we've been discussing. If there's yayin nesech, right, that's something that's forbidden, payment for it becomes forbidden. The same thing with idols. So that's the question, right? Is that something that is forbidden? And therefore, right, because it's an exchange, it's problematic. So the Gemara says maybe there's a difference that if he, let's say, paid her later, so then it's seen as a gift and not payment, and therefore it would be okay to use it as a sacrifice, or he paid her way before, before, right, services rendered, as they say. So because it's not done at the time, maybe it would be permissible. So then Daf 63 says maybe she actually, right, she got the animal beforehand, maybe she sanctified it before, and that's why it's okay, right? Let's say she sanctified it, and then she slept with him, and because it's still around, maybe it becomes forbidden, because now all of a sudden it becomes payment, or maybe it is okay. Okay, let's say he pays her after he slept with her. It depends how he pays her, right? If he says, I'll pay you with an animal, so then that's okay. But if he says, I'm going to pay you with this animal, he's already designating this animal as payment, and then it becomes forbidden. Okay. All right. Let's say a person gave money to his workers to go buy food, and he doesn't, so we say that he doesn't have to worry that they're going to buy forbidden food, basically shmita or maser or yayin nesech, right? Again, because what's the problem? If he gives them money and they buy something forbidden, then basically he paid for something forbidden. So we say you do not have to be concerned about that, but maybe it depends on the case, right? Maybe if the case is, if he says, buy what you want and then I'll pay for it, so then it's problematic because it's linked directly to what they're buying. But maybe, right, again, maybe it's like a storekeeper and the employer have like a like partnership, right, an agreement. So then it's like an exchange, and then it would be problematic if it's done right away, as opposed to the employer who says, I'll pay for it later on. That would be okay. But, right, a person, let's say if he obligates himself to pay back right away, so because the employer already gave the money, so then that would be problematic if they buy forbidden food. Or if the employer took the food directly from the storekeeper and gave it to the workers, and then it's not about later payments, and that's why it becomes forbidden. Wow. Okay. That's what we have for this week. I see that we have some time, so I'm happy to open up if anybody has some questions. If you want to discuss for a few minutes, I'm happy to do so. Yes.
Well, that was quite a presentation. Okay. But you were often talking about this poor non-Jew. He's frightened. What was the punishment for him if he accidentally did this, he didn't do that? What was it?
Well, that's a great question. So first of all, generally when we use frightened in this discussion, we mean frightened from the Jew that he's going to get in trouble, not that he's going to get some sort of punishment from God or from the courts, but he won't be able to buy the wine. He's not going to make the money that he was supposed to make, right? It's more frightened that the deal isn't going to go through.
He's not really frightened for his life or anything.
No, generally not. Not.
Okay.
More just he doesn't want to mess up the deal that they have, right? Mm-hmm. Again, there's some sort of deal between the Jew and the non-Jew. So he's frightened that he can mess it up, and that's why he's going to be more cautious. Or
that's not. Reasonable. That's reasonable.
Yeah. Yes.
But I was actually thinking the other way, the opposite. In other words, it's like if he's guilty, that's why he's afraid. You know what I mean? So
yes, but again, he's not afraid of being transgressing a mitzvah. He's afraid because he's gonna get he's gonna get messed up in some sort of way. But he's not afraid for his life.
But if he's afraid that he messed up because he did touch the wine.
Correct. Well, no. Sorry. It's a good point. When the Gemara says he's afraid, we use it as he's afraid to mess up the business deal. Therefore, he's not going to touch
so maybe
it.
not afraid. Maybe he's cautious. Cautious might be
Whatever the word is, right?
Yeah,
He is concerned that it's going to get. He doesn't want to mess up the business deal. Therefore, he's not going to touch it.
Okay.
It's not that he's
not that he
feeling
did
guilty
already
because he did something.
Right,
Correct.
okay.
It's a good point. Excellent. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just
Excellent.
waiting for somebody else to have a turn, and then I'll ask you another one.
Alisa, I sent you an email.
Oh, thank you, Zara.
With quite a bit of information. Rabbanit, how many? What's the population of Avoda now?
We have about 800 families who live here.
Yeah, but that's population. I asked because the website said 3,267 as of the end of 2023, but
I don't know.
I looked at Efrat, and Efrat says that it's estimated that now we have 11,000, but that's not correct because I think we're closer to 13,000. So anyway,
I don't know.
so
Efrat is the big city here,
yeah,
and we live in a small yishuv.
yeah, that's what I was explaining to Elisa. So I sent you some Wikipedia so if you can look Wikipedia, so you can look it up.
Excellent. Okay, Elisa, did you have another question?
Yeah, one about why is wine such an important thing? I noticed it at the Chabad when we're l'chaim, and sometimes he'll serve wine, but sometimes he won't. And but he's young, so I don't know. But why wine?
Excellent.
Why?
So in Judaism, wine is very important. And I would even take it back. I think that in the ancient world, wine was very important, meaning wine was seen as very special. It's funny because they actually drank wine like water, but it was seen as very precious, and therefore it's used in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple. And because of that, it's also used in idolatry, right? It's used as a form of worship, right? So we use it in a sanctifying way, right? For Kiddush, for Havdalah, right? We're always doing it with a cup of wine because a cup of wine gives whatever we're doing, it gives it importance. So because of that, the flip side is also, right, because this is something that's so special, the idolaters are also using wine, so we want to make sure they don't touch our wine. That's basically the idea.
And everything that you said, all of the minutiae that you used, was just to give the appearance he did or he didn't touch the wine.
Correct.
Yeah.
Meaning obviously if you know that he used it for his temple, obviously that is forbidden. This whole chapter was, I don't know if he touched it. I don't know what he did with it. I don't, right? And that's where we get into all of this, where it becomes very complicated. I actually listened to, there was a class that a rabbi gave a few nights ago on Jewish wine production now. And he spoke about how, we have a lot of wineries here in Israel, and how he actually said that anything that happens before the grapes get to the winery can be done by a non-Jew. They can pick the grapes, they can drive the truck, but as soon as the grapes arrive at the winery, where they're put into these big vats and all these different things happen, that process has to be done by Jews. So that was just very interesting in terms of how production works nowadays. Right, I know that in outside of Israel, where they do, let's say, special runs for kosher wine, then the Jew will be watching, where like shmirah, right? There'll be a Jew who watches the entire process to make sure that nobody touches it. And it's, nowadays everything is mechanical anyway, or automated. So it was just very interesting.
This is one of those unusual times when we have 8.5 minutes. So I'm going to really load you up. I know what the blessing is over the grapes. I get it. Anyhow. But did you know that it has to do with how ripe it is? And if you can see, and help me with this, which blessing you use when you can see through the skin of the grape. Do you know anything about that? Okay, what do you put it this way? What's the blessing over eating grapes?
Borei pri ha'etz.
Yes. Well, I didn't know that. I thought it was okay, but anyhow, but if the grapes you can't see through the skin, it changes it. Have you ever heard that one?
I have not heard that.
Okay.
I have not heard that.
Raisins, so you can't see through them, and
Wait a minute,
raisins
so
is
hard.
also
I need to
good
tell you something. I'm a lip reader, and okay.
So okay, I'll
your
say it
name
slowly.
comes across your mouth.
Oh, wait a minute. So
There, that's perfect. Go ahead.
So I'm saying that even raisins that you can't see through, they're also ha'etz.
Yeah, you only say borei pri hagafen if you
When it's
are
wine.
drinking grape juice or wine. Otherwise, if you're eating the fruit, you say borei pri ha'etz.
Yeah. Grape juice
I know
and
that
wine.
has to do with the height of the vine. I know that. Below 18 inches is Adamant, above it is it. Now, if I'm wrong, you can always, I pray to God, you can always correct me. Or you can just say, I never heard that one.
I don't know if it has to do with the height. I think it has to do with whether it's something that's recurring. In other words, a tree, anything that grows year after year, whereas Hadamah
A banana, that's why you say Adama. Yeah,
right,
that one.
Right.
but
So
that's
grapes,
a
it doesn't
thing.
matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Grapes is grapes is not a 1 year thing. It's it comes back every year.
That's the portion that the fruit it dies off every year, and that's why you say.
Yeah, well, that's
on
a banana. That's why
it's
even though
not a
banana
real
looks
tree,
like,
by the way. That's the
right.
reason.
It looks like a tree, but it's not because
No, it's not. Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit. All right.
No problem. All right. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And Chodesh Tov. Rosh Chodesh Elul is Sunday and Monday. So we are getting closer to the high holidays. Not there yet, but getting closer. So wishing everyone a Chodesh Tov and a Shabbat Shalom. And Be'ezrat Hashem, I will see you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Chodesh Tov.